One more time, we meet many old friends and some new faces, remembering our beloved Dr. Mangesh Natkani and the many wonderful talks that he has given to us. He gave the last of his talks at Savitri Bhavan here in this amphitheater in 2007. So today our speaker is Mr. Jamshed Mavalwalla. I will invite him up here in a moment. He's been doing a special study in this area and he's going to share some of his findings with us. Please, Jamshed.
I feel greatly privileged today to pay my deepest respect to Dr. Mangesh Natkani and give a memorial talk in his memory on one aspect of Sri Aurobindo's mantric poem, Savitri. Thank you. I was blessed to have Natkani-ji as my neighbor. Natkani-ji took upon himself the task of spreading the understanding of Sri Aurobindo's works. And his illuminating talks not only brought mental clarity, but also gave very practical examples for us to follow. I clearly remember there used to be a huge crowd coming to listen to him. And the big hall of Sri Aurobindo Society used to get absolutely full and would overflow, people sitting on the stairs and in the garden. One can wonder what made Natkani-ji so special that huge crowd used to come. When he sat on the podium, one could see his grand personality. When he spoke, one would hear a real rich quality of voice. But surely that was not the thing which made him special. There was something beautiful, and that special thing was that he had an intense love for Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And when he spoke, one could feel that intense love pouring out in his talks. And I feel that was what compelled people to come to listen to him. I remember when I was in Secunderabad in 1990s, I used to eagerly wait for every Saturday to listen to him on his talks on the essays on the Gita. Once Natkani-ji had said in his talks that there is one volume of Sri Aurobindo which is hardly read by anybody. That volume is SABCL 30, which has index and glossary. Now this volume is studied by people or seekers who want to study Sri Aurobindo subject-wise. And Natkani-ji used to encourage people to study and then encouraged to give them talks. And I was one of the beneficiaries. He used to encourage me to give talks. On 23rd September 2007, when Natkani-ji left his body, Dr. Alok Pandey told me that he would like someone to read Savitri near his body. I at once started reading it. Reading Savitri in front of Natkani-ji's body was like saying thank you to the person who had spread the mantra of Savitri wide and made us all love Savitri. Natkani-ji's body was kept for 24 hours at his residence. In the night, the recitation of Nirod Baran's Savitri was played, and we in turn sat near his body. In the night, the atmosphere was absolutely blissful. I felt intense joy while sitting and reading Savitri near his body. And I realized one thing. Sitting beside a yogi, alive or not, is always a great experience. Today's topic is surrender in Savitri. We shall go through passages which talk of surrender, and we will try and correlate those passages with quotations from other works of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. First, we will have a look at what Savitri has to say about a human surrender, then Aswapati's surrender, then Savitri's surrender, and lastly, what the Supreme has to say to Savitri on one aspect of surrender. But before I start with that, I would like to give a very short introduction to what surrender is in the integral yoga. We know that in Sri Aurobindo's yoga or integral yoga, the personal effort required of a sadhaka are three: aspiration, rejection, surrender. Lot of importance is given to the surrender. In fact, in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, if one has not decided to surrender completely to the Divine Mother, Mother says one cannot even begin doing sadhana. The Sanskrit word for surrender is samarpan. Sam means complete. Arpan means offering. So surrender is complete offering or complete giving. Surrender is giving oneself to the divine, whatever one is, to the divine Shakti. Give all your actions, all your movements, and your feelings. So in Savitri, wherever the word self-giving comes, it is referring to surrender. Surrender is a decision taken to hand over one's responsibility of life to the Divine Mother. In Book 2, Canto 11, page 276, there are lines that convey that we should accept the supremacy of the Divine Shakti and dare to absolutely surrender to her. The Savitri lines: a simple vast supremacy confess, dare to surrender to her absolute. I will read the complete passage in parts and make an effort to explain it. But thought nor word can seize eternal truth. The whole world lives in a lonely ray of a sun. The human thought or speech can never hope to seize the eternal truth. Now this truth is with capital T. What does this truth with capital T mean? There are a good number of quotations which says that truth with capital T is divine. So human thought or speech can never hope to grasp or understand the entire divine. What the whole world receives is just one ray of that sun. Savitri lines. In our hypnosis by one luminous point, we see not what small figure of her we hold. We feel not her inspiring boundlessness. We share not her immortal liberty. Thus is it even with the seer and sage, for still the human limits the divine. What the human understands is a very small representation of the divine, because human beings can only concentrate at one point or on limited. So we do not feel the inspiring infinity and miss the immortal freedom. This even happens with a man of wisdom, a seer and a sage. The human being generally limits the divine. So what is the solution? Then the Savitri lines. Out of our thoughts, we must leap up to sight, breathe her divine illimitable air, her simple vast supremacy confess, dare to surrender to her absolute. Sri Aurobindo tells us that we must go beyond the plane of mind and thought and open to a direct revelation of the divine. We must breathe the natural infinite air of the divine Shakti. It is divine Shakti because the phrase used is breathe her divine illimitable air. And we must accept the supremacy of the divine Shakti and dare to surrender to her completely. We must accept the supremacy of the divine Shakti because on yoga, if we have to surrender, we must surrender to a force which is much greater, much higher than us. And the Shakti or the force of the divine Shakti is decisive, all-wise, and without limits. Then there is a phrase, dare to surrender to her absolute. To absolutely surrender, we need courage to completely rely on the divine and not depend on our mind, vital or physical strength or willpower we generally have. Then Sri Aurobindo tells us, what happens when we completely depend on the divine and completely surrender to her? Then the unmanifest reflects his form in the still mind as in a living glass. The timeless ray descends into our hearts and we are wrapped into eternity. When man accepts the supremacy of the divine Shakti and completely surrenders, there are two things that will happen. Firstly, the unmanifest divine reflects his form, which means that one identifies with the divine. There is a quotation of the mother which says, if man surrenders totally to the divine, he identifies himself with the divine. This identification happens in a still mind, a quiet mind. This quiet or a still mind is a necessary condition for the complete surrender. Sri Aurobindo in one of his letters says, there must be a complete surrender and self-giving. And for that, it is necessary to have a mind that can remain quiet and allow the divine force to act. Secondly, what happens is then when we completely surrender to the divine, the timeless ray, which is light, descends into our hearts. The mother's quotation which brings this out says, offer sincerely to the divine your obscurities, and you will be able to receive the light. And the last line we read was, and we are wrapped into eternity. In surrender, we feel rapturous with the bliss of the divine. Here I'm reminded of one quotation of Sri Aurobindo which says, a very rapturous thing is absolute surrender to the divine, as anyone who has done it can tell you. So in this passage of Savitri, we saw that to know the eternal truth, we have to accept the supremacy of the divine Shakti and absolutely surrender to her. Then we can realize the divine and the light descends into our hearts. And the surrender is a very rapturous, blissful thing. But one can ask a question, how do we really surrender? The method is to remember every moment of one's life and offer or give whatever work one does or give oneself completely. When you start giving everything, your thoughts, your ideas, your work, your ambitions, your feelings, then the whole life is taken up by the divine and the surrender can be complete. The best example to understand how do we surrender comes in the book Udar, one of the mother's children. We know that Udar Pinto was a great instrument of the mother. In fact, nearly all the commercial departments of the ashram was started by Udar Pinto. One day, Udar asked the mother, I have been doing yoga for many years, but I am not absolutely certain how to do the yoga of Sri Aurobindo. I have read all the books and tried to do the yoga, but I am not certain how far I have progressed. So he asked the mother to help him out. The mother said, you are doing it all wrong. Then he asked, but what shall I do? The mother said, I will do the yoga for you. And he was thrilled and he asked, Mother, what do I have to do in that case? Mother replied, give yourself over to me and I will do it for you. This is the real secret. Give yourself, give whatever you are, and then you allow the mother to penetrate you and work in you. The Udar then said, Mother, how do I surrender? The mother explained him the detailed offering or the detailed surrender by asking another question. What is the first thing you do when you get up in the morning? Udar said, I brush my teeth. Mother said, how do you brush your teeth? He said, how? Like everyone else does. Then mother said, you are doing it unconsciously. Think of me while you are doing it, and I will do it for you. When you try and offer the act of brushing your teeth to the Divine Mother, and when the Divine Mother accepts that offering, she is in fact doing it with you. And this is true for all the actions that we do. Now we shall look at the surrender of Aswapati. The first time in the book Savitri, Aswapati's surrender is mentioned is in Book 2, Canto 14, The World Soul. Here, as an answer to Aswapati's yearning, he has a darshan of the Divine Mother. Here, Sri Aurobindo describes the Divine Mother as the sole omnipotent goddess ever veiled. Savitri lines. He saw the mystic outline of her face, overwhelmed by her implacable light and bliss. And as a supreme answer to the yearning of Aswapati's heart, Aswapati sees a mystic outline of the face of the Divine Mother, and he is overwhelmed by an unstoppable light and bliss. Savitri lines. Drunk with a deep golden spiritual wine, he cast from the rent stillness of his soul a cry of adoration and desire, and the surrender of his boundless mind, and the self-giving of his silent heart. He fell down at her feet, unconscious prone. Aswapati, intoxicated with the divine spirit, breaks out of the silence of his soul into a cry of adoration and seeking. Then Aswapati, with the surrender of his boundless mind and the self-giving of his silent heart, and we know that self-giving of his silent heart means surrender of his heart, he fell down at the feet of the Divine Mother. Here we have an indication that Aswapati had already surrendered his mind and heart. But the surrender of his mindless heart and the self-giving of his silent heart, Sri Aurobindo is trying to give us an indication, an hint that what is the method of surrendering. I will read a quotation of the mother, which says, the process of surrender, the offering of ourselves, is done either through the mind or heart or the emotion or the life impulses or through all of them together. How is the surrender done by the mind? The mind understands the need to surrender and makes a resolution to surrender and remember every minute and offer oneself to the divine. Sri Aurobindo in one of his quotations puts it, a clear and a sincere mind seeing the necessity of surrender. Besides, the mind can control all that comes in the way of surrender. Mind can enforce a clear and a sincere will on the disobedient members of our being to surrender. Then the self-giving of his silent heart. The self-giving of a heart is nothing but the surrender of the heart, the surrender of the emotions. The self-giving of a heart is done with adoration and devotion. In the synthesis of yoga, Sri Aurobindo explains how this self-giving of a heart with adoration is done. Here Sri Aurobindo first quotes the Gita, and the quotation is, "He who gives to me with a heart of adoration a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or a cup of water, I take and enjoy that offering of his devotion." Then Sri Aurobindo continues and says, and it is not only external gift that can be so offered with love and devotion, but all our thoughts, all our feelings, and sensations, all our outward activities can be such gifts to the eternal. The idea that Aswapati had already surrendered himself comes in another passage in Savitri, Book 3, page 332. Savitri lines, his living sacrificed and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical, turned to its far-off fount of light and love. Here it talks of Aswapati's sacrificed and offered heart. We know that offered heart is nothing but the surrendered heart. Even the sacrificed heart is surrendered heart. To understand the word sacrifice, I will just read out a quotation. In the spiritual sense, sacrifice has a different meaning. It does not indicate giving up what is dear to us. It means offering of oneself. It has the original sense of making sacred. Making sacred, as we know, is consecration, which means when we offer to the divine and divine takes the offering, it becomes sacred. In this passage, Aswapati has offered his heart as a living sacrifice for the great work of transformation. Savitri lines I'll read again. His living sacrificed and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical, turned to its far-off fount of light and love. Absorbed means absolutely concentrated. This surrendered heart was absolutely concentrated in a mystical adoration of the Supreme Divine Mother. This adoration is turned upward to a far-off distant fount, the source of light and love. Here in this passage, again Sri Aurobindo brings out subtly another important aspect of surrender. In Synthesis of Yoga, Sri Aurobindo says, I'll read the quotation, "It is evident to begin with that even if such a discipline of self-giving to the eternal is begin without devotion, it leads straight and inevitably towards the highest devotion possible, the most profound God love." It is bound to be. When you think of the divine and offer yourself lakhs of time, because we are supposed to offer it every moment, you are bound to fall in love with the divine, and that devotion would come in. Now we will see the third and the last passage, which talks of Aswapati's surrender. Actually, it's not a passage, it is just one line. A vast surrender was his only strength. It's on page 315. What is this vast surrender? Vast includes the surrender of the complete being. But then he says, a vast surrender was his only strength. I'm trying to emphasize on the word only. Why only? We human beings have a strength of a mind, vital, our willpower, or our physical strength. That means Aswapati did not have this, and the strength he had was only the strength of surrender. To understand what the strength of surrender means, I will just bring out a gist of another quotation from Sri Aurobindo. In this quotation, Sri Aurobindo compares the path of surrender with other paths of doing yoga. He says, even the most powerful Raj-yogic self-control, the most developed pranayam, the most strenuous meditation, the most ecstatic bhakti, the most self-denying action, mighty as they are and efficacious. He doesn't say they are weak, they are mighty and efficacious, but are comparatively weak in their results. Why are they weak? Because those are all limited to a certain extent by our capacity. But this path of surrender is illimitable in potency because it is God's capacity. So result of surrender is infinite in potency because there the strength of the God, the strength of the divine helps us. So only strength that the Aswapati had was the divine strength, and which is illimitable. But suppose if I say that even the God's strength has a limitation, would you all believe it? Yes. This strength is only limited by a divine will, which knows what is best for the world and for each of us in the world. And with this only strength of Aswapati, what did he achieve? He could achieve the highest personal sadhana that anyone can achieve. And he could compel the Divine Mother to take birth to help humanity. Now let us have a look at the passages which talk of surrender of Savitri. In Book 1, Canto 2, where Sri Aurobindo describes Savitri, there is a line which indicates that surrender was absolutely natural to her. A wide self-giving was her native act. The self-giving is done to the divine, and this self-giving means surrender. So here we see that surrender was a native act, her second nature. The act of self-giving happened to her spontaneously all the time. Savitri lines. A white self-giving was her native act, a magnanimity as of sea or sky, enveloped with his greatness all that came, and gave a sense as of greatened world. When self-giving becomes a natural act, then all the acts are taken by the Divine Mother, and so they are not limited. They become magnanimous as of sea or sky. When the Divine Mother enters and participates in all our acts, the atmosphere around us becomes great and gives a sense as of greatened world. Now the process of surrender is remembering every second and offering or giving it to the divine. But the question arises when one is concentrating on some work, when one's mind is completely involved, how can you remember every second and offer it to the divine? I'm reminded of a story which really brings out beautifully. We all know that Narad was a great devotee of Vishnu, and possibly Narad wanted to hear this from Vishnu. So he asked Vishnu, tell me who's your most devoted disciple? Vishnu says, there is a farmer on the earth who's the most devoted disciple. Then Narad says, how come? He says, okay, I will give you a task to be completed and then we'll discuss. So he gives him a vessel and he fills the vessel with oil, but up to the brim. Then he says, now you go around the world, but the condition is not a drop of oil should fall down, and then come back. Narad concentrates and goes around the world, and when he comes back, he's very happy that not a drop of oil has fallen down. And he feels now Vishnu will have to accept that I am the greatest devotee because I have completed the task given by Vishnu. Then Vishnu asks him, while going around the world, how many times did you remember and offered the act? Narad says, how can I remember? I was all the time concentrating that not a drop should fall down. Then Vishnu tells him that that farmer is a married man. He has to do all the work that a person has to do. He still remembers me every second and offers to me. And that is the reason he is my most beloved disciple. If one cannot remember every second of our work, then in one of the letters, Aurobindo gives us a solution for the beginners. This is really a compassion of Sri Aurobindo. He knows us and he will also give us solution which we can offer. I'll read the quotation. If you can't as yet remember the divine all the time you are working, it does not greatly matter. To remember and dedicate at the beginning and give thanks at the end ought to be enough for the present. Or at the most, to remember too when there is a pause. Sri Aurobindo continues in this letter and then says, when people remember all the time during the work, and it can be done, it is usually with the back of their mind, or else there is created gradually a faculty of double consciousness. One in the front that works, and one within that witnesses and remembers. A white self-giving was her native act. So when Savitri's self-giving was a native act, her second nature, that means she was able to do it by a faculty of double consciousness. Her inner being remembering and offering, and her outer being does the act. The second time Sri Aurobindo mentions about Savitri's surrender is in Book 7, the very first page of Canto 5, The Finding of the Soul, page 522. In this passage, Sri Aurobindo is referring to the inward journey of Savitri to find her soul. Onward she passed, seeking the soul's mystic cave. At first, she stepped into a night of God. Savitri goes ahead in search of her soul into the secret cave, which is an inward journey. At first, she finds herself in a supernatural darkness that intervenes. And Sri Aurobindo describes this darkness as a night of God. Then the lines, the light was quenched that helps the laboring world, the power that struggles and stumbles in our life. This inefficient mind gave up its thoughts, the striving heart, its unveiling hopes. The light that helps the man in the world is extinguished in this night. When the heart generally strives, there is always a hope. But in this night of God, the heart gave up its vain hopes. Then Savitri lines, all knowledge failed and the ideas forms, the unseen light she could not claim nor own. In a simple purity of emptiness, her mind knelt down before the unknowable. All was abolished, save her naked self. Here the knowledge fails, and all forms taken up by the idea fails, and the unseen light she can neither claim nor possess. In this pure emptiness, all strength is abolished. Savitri lines, all was abolished save her naked self and the prostrate yearning of a surrendered heart. When all help and strength is abolished and there is no hope, only then the phrase comes of a surrendered heart. The reason is that it is only surrendered heart that can help one in the inward journey to find one's soul or psychic being. To understand how the surrender helps in the inward journey to find one's soul, I will give a gist of a passage from the Life Divine, chapter The Triple Transformation. Here Sri Aurobindo says, we have an outer nature and there is an inner being. Between them, there is a very thick wall. Now, even this thick wall screens our inner being from our outer awareness. Even before the purification of the outer nature is done, there is a possibility that one can break this wall. But this is a premature movement and has very serious dangers. In entering within, one may start having some supernormal experiences, chaotic experiences, which one may not understand and may not have even solution to that. There can be forces which chaotically drive the being. One may keep wandering in the wilderness of glamour, but this glamour is a deception. Here in the supernatural darkness, there can be voices and influences which claim to be the divine being, but in truth, they are of a very different character. We can be misled from the true way of the inner life and even fail to find our way into the true realization. Then later on, Sri Aurobindo says, for this penetration into the luminous script of the soul, there are few useful aids for this difficult passage. And these useful aids are detachment, a concentration in the heart, austerity, self-purification, rejection of the ego and desire. And then he says, but the strongest and the most central way is a path of self-offering and surrender of ourselves and of our parts of the nature to the divine being. Once we completely surrender ourselves to the divine Shakti, then she carries us to the path. This is one of the main reasons why there is a need to surrender to the divine Shakti in the integral yoga. The dangers of yoga are avoided and the path of surrender. There is a quotation of the mother which says, the path of surrender is safe and sure. If you take up this path of surrender fully and sincerely, there is no more danger or serious difficulty. When Savitri starts her inward journey to find her soul, she had already surrendered herself, and that is the reason she could overcome all obstacles and dangers of the path. Now I wish to emphasize the phrase, the prostate yearning of the surrendered heart. The mother points out that one of the three ways by which total self-giving to the divine or complete surrender to the divine is to prostrate oneself at the divine's feet. Now in this passage where it's mentioned surrendered heart, and the continuation of the same sentence without a full stop, there is a description of the Savitri's egoless state. I'll read the lines. All was abolished save her naked self and the prostrate yearning of a surrendered heart. There was no strength in her, no pride of force. The lofty burning desire had sunk ashamed, a vanity of separate self. The hope of spiritual greatness fled. Salvation she asked not, nor a heavenly crown. Humility seemed now too proud a state. There was no pride in Savitri. Her flaming desire sinks down as if it is ashamed, realizing to be a vanity of the self that presumes itself to be separate. There was no asking for spiritual greatness or salvation or heavenly crown. Even this humility seemed like a proud state because Savitri has reached an absolute egoless state. There is a linkage between complete surrender and the egoless state. Sri Aurobindo in one of his letters state, a complete surrender means to cut the knot of the ego in each part of the being and offer it, free and whole to the divine. Another quotation says, egoism goes when the individual is entirely surrendered to the divine. In the poem Savitri, third time Savitri's surrender is mentioned when she has realized her soul and the different centers of consciousness has been completely transformed. Behind all reigned her sovereign deathless soul, casting aside its veil of ignorance, surrendered into the great world mother's hands. Only she obeyed her soul's supreme behest in the enigma of the inconscient world. Behind all change movements of the different centers of consciousness, the immortal soul of Savitri is the supreme ruler. Generally, in all human beings, the ruler is either vital or the mind. But now Savitri is completely ruled by her soul or psychic being. After that, there are lines that convey that Savitri had surrendered herself into the hands of the Great World Mother and follows only the Great World Mother's supreme will in the riddle of the inconscient world. This is because there is a correlation between realizing one's psychic being and surrendering to the Divine Mother. There is a quotation of Sri Aurobindo which says, if the psychic manifests, it will ask you to surrender to the Mother. It is not only that, there is another quotation which says, when the psychic awakes, it can bring a sudden and a true surrender of the whole being. Not only that, Sri Aurobindo goes to the extent of saying, no complete surrender is possible without the psychic opening. So naturally, after realizing the soul, Savitri surrendered herself into Great World Mother's hand, and she was obeying only the Divine Mother. Now one can ask a question that once one has realized one's soul, one has achieved the aim of yoga, of realizing the divinity in oneself. What is the need to surrender to the Divine Mother? In integral yoga, realizing the divinity in oneself is just the first step and not the goal of the yoga. The last step is to let the highest possible force descend and transform our mind, vital and physical. And for that, you need a much greater force and the surrender of the Divine Mother, because the force of the Divine Mother is decisive, all-wise, and without limits. Now in these passages, we saw that Aswapati had surrendered, Savitri had surrendered. But what about we people? We who make an effort to remember and offer ourselves. And even when we offer, we may not be able to offer completely, we may offer partly. Does the Divine Mother receive our part offering that we try and give, or we try and fumble and offer ourselves? I will give you 2 occasions as a proof of that. We have all known or heard of Amal Kiran as a great poet, as a great author, and a humorist. But now I will talk about him as a flower painter. Amal Kiran, mother had given him lot of material to paint. After the pranam, Amal Kiran used to go to his room and start painting the flowers till they were fresh. And while painting, he used to feel that certain portions he had done with great cleverness, and he used to feel very proud of it. Now every week, mother used to examine the paintings. She would just pass over the pages where he had done with lot of cleverness and would not say anything. But there were certain other portions where mother would stop, smile, and appreciate them. And then Amal remembered that these were the portions where he had done with remembrance, with the inner gesture of offering. So the proof is, mother could recognize the painting just by seeing it. The another incident is that in the ashram, we have one department, Sri Smriti, where all the items used by the mother and Sri Aurobindo are kept. In the third room, where the Sri Aurobindo's typewriter and his chair is kept, in the cupboard, there is a very small, very ordinary ribbon kept. It is said, and there is little stitching done on it. It is said that when mother saw that ribbon, she appreciated that here every act of stitching was completely offered to the divine. And the very fact, And Mother must have appreciated that ribbon so much that the Sri Smriti people have kept that ribbon with all the material that were used by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So these are the true proof which confirms that even when we offer partly or we make an offer, the Mother receives our offering. Sri Aurobindo has written a sonnet, Surrender. Sonnet is a poet's personal experience. The first line of the sonnet of surrender is, O thou of whom I am the instrument. Sri Aurobindo says that he is the instrument of the divine. When the surrender is complete, then one becomes a true instrument of the divine. In the book 11, Savitri has refused all the gifts of solitary bliss and other things which were offered by the Supreme for herself. And there is a last line in that paragraph which says, Thy sweetness give to me for earth and men. Page 697. In this line it shows that Savitri wants to become an instrument of the Supreme. So whatever the Supreme Lord wants to give to humanity, it could be given to Savitri. In active self-giving, that is surrender, it is not only accepting the divine will, but giving up one's own will to become an instrument of the divine or a channel of the divine or becoming a servant of the divine. Now the lines that I'll be reading will be what is Supreme telling Savitri that you are my instrument. Here I will be reading only those lines which bring out some aspect of being an instrument of the channel of the divine by surrendering completely to the divine. Let us see what Supreme has to say about being an instrument, starting from page 698. O beautiful body of the incarnate word, thy thoughts are mine. I have spoken with thy voice. My will is thine. What thou hast chosen, I choose. All thou hast asked, I give to earth and men. This is an example of being complete instrument of the divine. Supreme says that Savitri's thoughts are his thoughts. Whenever Supreme wants to speak, he will speak through Savitri. The Supreme's will is Savitri's will. And whatever Savitri has chosen was in fact chosen by the Supreme. Here the surrender is so complete, the instrumentation is so complete, the Supreme Divine will give to humanity through Savitri. Then the Supreme tells her what he would do to a surrendered instrument. I lay my hands upon thy soul of flame. I lay my hands upon thy heart of love. I lay my hands is a beautiful poetic imagery, meaning I will capture you, I will possess you. Supreme says that because you have surrendered, I will capture your soul and your heart of love. Now, how does the Supreme capture us when we surrender to the divine? When you start offering, you allow the divine to penetrate you, in you. And by the act that divine can penetrate, divine can possess us. But when the divine captures us or possesses us, what does the divine do? The divine perfects the human being so that one becomes fit for divine living. I yoke thee to my power of work in time. Yoke is a wooden cross piece fastened over two bullocks to plow the field. So this is the kind of work that Supreme says he will take from Savitri, yoking his power in time. So when we become the true instrument, divine can get the work done through us. Again, after a few lines, I bind by thy heart's passion, thy heart to mine. The Supreme says, I will tie or bind your heart to mine by your heart's passion. Now the phrase, by your heart's passion, brings out few aspects. First is, when your heart passionately wants to do things, means there is a willingness on your part. You are willfully choosing to do it. Secondly, the heart's passion can only come when there is a joy in the act of offering, enthusiasm in the act of offering, giving to the divine. Then is an ardor to unite with the divine. By the heart's passion brings out three methods by which we can surrender. I will bring that out by reading the quotations. Mother says, to make your surrender total, you must choose to make your surrender total. Otherwise, you will not do it. It will not get done by itself. It is you who must want it. Sri Aurobindo also brings out this point and says, the Supreme demands your surrender to her, but does not impose it. Your surrender must be self-made and free. It must be the surrender of a living being, not an inert mechanical tool. The quotation which brings out the joy and enthusiasm are from the mothers. The first quotation, well, the surrender that is self-giving to the divine must be happy, joyful, made gladly. Second quotation is, you can give yourself with much enthusiasm. So these 3 points are really important. Choose to make your surrender total. The self-giving to the divine must be happy, joyful, made gladly, and give yourself with enthusiasm. Returning to the lines of Savitri, and lay my splendid yoke upon thy soul, now will I do in thee my marvelous works. What are these marvelous works that the Supreme wants to do? This marvelous works is the work of our next step in evolution. Now, next 4 lines of Savitri, we will see how the Supreme prepares us for the next step of evolution when we become an instrument. Line says, I will fasten thy nature with my cords of strength. In surrender, when we become a true instrument, then the divine can come in us and fasten our nature with his cords of strength. How does the divine give us that strength of his? I'll give another gist of quotation from Sri Aurobindo. The divine consciousness is above us. By the very act of self-giving, the divine force descends in us and increases our capacity and receptivity. This increase in receptivity brings down stronger divine force and will further increase our capacity and strength. But for this to continuously happen, there must be on our part a progressive surrender into the hands of the divine and allow the divine power to do whatever is needed for their work. Then the 2 lines of Savitri, subdue to my delight thy spirit's limbs and make thee a vivid knot of all my bliss. Not only strength, but we will be overwhelmed in our spirit by divine's delight. This divine delight will make us blissful. The quotation which brings this out says, Atma Samarpan does not exclude a will for delight of oneness. Another quotation says, the divine give itself to those who give themselves without reserve and in all their paths to the divine. For them, the bliss, the seeds of Ananda. And the 4th line is, and build in thee my proud and crystal home. My proud and crystal home means divine superior and lucent home. So in surrender, after divine giving us the divine strength and Ananda, then the Supreme will create a body for the next step of evolution. which is superior, lucent, transparent. This is the home, this home is the supramental body. Then after a few lines, I will pursue thee across the centuries. Thou shalt be hunted through the world by love. When one becomes an instrument, then the divine does not leave you. The divine will pursue, chase us for ages. What better thing can happen than the divine chasing us? This chase, this hunting will be done by love. Nowhere shalt thou escape my living eyes. Nowhere we will be able to escape from the divine's living eyes. In short, the divine will be us for ages in our future lives. Who hunts and seizes me, my captive grows. This shalt thou henceforth learn from thy heartbeats. Normally, when you hunt or seize a thing, you are the master. But when you pursue the divine, the more you pursue the divine, the more you become the captive of the divine. This is the only hunt where the hunter becomes the hunted. You surrender yourself and become the instrument of the divine. Then you are becoming the captive of the divine. Forever love, O beautiful slave of God. We will first understand what the slave of God means. When one surrenders, one wants to obey the divine will. This can happen by becoming an instrument or becoming a channel of the divine. But the instrument or channel is not a living being. A servant of the divine can be a better example of a living being. But the best example of a living being is becoming a slave of God. Because a slave does not have a will of his own. He obeys only the master. Slave is completely dependent on the master and is controlled by the master. Forever love, O beautiful slave of God. Forever love. Forever love means to be consumed by divine love. And then one willingly, lovingly wants to be a captive of the divine, and so becomes a beautiful slave of God. The highest form of surrender is to become a loving, willing slave of God. And it is the divine love that makes it beautiful. This phrase, O beautiful slave of God, is the highest state one can achieve by surrender. O lasso of my rapture's widening noose, become my cord of universal love. The divine throws this lasso on our souls, and that lasso captures our soul, and Supreme takes care of us from then birth to birth. To be caught by a divine lasso, I think one needs to be really graced. Otherwise, generally people are lost by the lassos of the world through their desires. Lasso is similar something to the golden chain, O cord of universal love. Once you love the mother, you are captured forever. Sri Aurobindo has put the same idea in Savitri, what the mother has said in prose. Nalinikan Gupta tells us that the mother has said, whoever gets my touch, whoever has a second of true aspiration, a true love for me, he's finished for life, for all lives. He's bound to me. I have put a golden chain round his neck. His heart is bound eternally to me. Now I shall narrate the experience, mother's experience, while reading this line, forever love, O beautiful slave of God. About this line, the mother says, the line of Savitri that gave me the most overpowering experience of the entire book. And when I came to this particular line, I was as if suddenly swept up and engulfed in the eternal truth. Everything was abolished except this: forever love, O beautiful slave of God, that alone existed. There is another experience of the mother when she read this line. The mother has recited the passage from the book 11 of Savitri, which we in fact heard from the start, a very short version of that. The mother disclosed that in the line, forever love, O beautiful slave of God, the word she saw in place of beautiful was powerful. Though she did not read powerful, in the late hours of the evening, when she used to be inwardly absorbed in Sri Aurobindo's presence, she asked him why she had that variant in that line. He answered, Sri Aurobindo answered, what you have read is a truth, but the truth of the future. At present, beautiful and not powerful is the true word. This surrender of the slave of God, which is beautiful, will become powerful slave of God, powerful to take humanity to the next step of evolution. I end this talk with a very short prayer. Oh, our sweet Divine Mother, help us to remember all the time to offer all our activities and offer ourselves completely to you. May our self-giving become a native act, our second nature. May our surrender become absolute. May we become a beautiful slave of the Divine Mother in this very life. Amen.